Hi, I'm Rebecca Bradley. This is the Virtual Crime Book Club. It is Monday, the 28th of December 2020, and today we are discussing The Lincoln Lawyer by Michael Connelly. If you are watching this video after the event, be aware there are likely to be spoilers. So if you haven't read the book yet, just bear that in mind if you want to read the book before you watch the video. So, I take it everybody's read the book?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, first question as usual. Did you enjoy it?
Yes.
Very much.
A lot.
Very much.
Yeah.
No, I didn't enjoy it.
Oh,
You didn't?
No, not particularly. I didn't dislike it, but I didn't particularly enjoy it either.
Do you want to explain what it was about it?
Well, I just found that the characters were unbelievable, and what was portrayed of Mickey Haller, I thought he was a really horrible person, and I just disliked him intensely.
Did you?
Yes.
I can say that I have a very vast legal background, many years of working in law. The book was spot on. This book, with all the things that they said about the law, the way the law worked, the way that you didn't have to be guilty to spend the rest of your life in jail, the way everybody was crooked, spot on. It was exactly the way that it is. So
Yeah, but
I enjoyed that, yeah.
I felt it took an awful long time to get going. The first 100 pages were all just about these minor cases and sort of Haller sort of doing this and doing that before the actual plot began.
Do you know what I liked? What I liked about those minor cases is, though, I knew they're going to feature in this somewhere, and I had a lot of fun trying to guess how he was going to work them in and what part they'd play. You know, people like the down and out prostitute and the bikers, and I knew they were all going to come in somewhere. So I was intrigued to see how he'd work them in.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. It for me, it was. The setup was actually really intriguing because there seemed to be so many different things going on, and I was really interested in how it was going to be woven together. And once I'd got my head into the very American style, which I have not read, I think, since John Grisham many years ago, so it took a bit of getting used to. But once I had, I was really involved in it, and I quite liked the character. I found him very believable, but maybe that's because I don't know much about American law. I don't know, but I did find him really believable.
I must admit, I enjoyed the book, but I found it difficult to get into, mainly because I just didn't like him initially, and it was only towards the end. And I liked, because you've got to feel that somebody's got redeeming features, and I just didn't feel that he particularly had. But it was a very technical book. I enjoyed all the technicalities because I thought, I bet he's obviously worked in the legal profession, and I did enjoy that. I must admit, all the procedural stuff.
But I thought. Oh, sorry.
Now, I was just going to say, I think there was, when I read the front of the book, acknowledgements, there was a lot of thanks to actual lawyers that he'd worked with prior to writing the book. He had a lot of help. And I think that's why it was so authentic.
Very well,
yeah. And I thought, actually, because right towards the start, when there was, so yes, there did seem to be a lot of negatives, or he was more like jaded and cynical character rather than that he was, necessarily bad. But and there was that sentence that he said that he didn't believe in the law anymore. It wasn't a search after truth, that it was all about technicalities and just getting the best out of a legal loophole or situation or something. And then there were some actions, like with him helping pro bono that prostitute and so on, which I felt was, that showed that, yes, in spite of what he says and his very cynical sort of narrative, he does actually help people. He does still believe in something, but he's just kind of almost afraid to let it show. So I felt there was some redeeming features there.
I felt that was what made it believable, that his 2 ex-wives would still be amicable with him. You know, one of them even says, "We all love you," and she's almost surprised by that because he can be such a snake. But at the same time, I think you have a point, Marina, that, you know, there is some redemptive nature in him, and he sees it too, every once in a while. And one of the things I like about his character is that he admits it, that he's full of faults and that he's jaded and cynical, and that, you know, he says at the end, I shot him. I mean, he's not blind to his very serious weaknesses, which I also found refreshing.
He was incredibly sexist and a bully. He expected everybody to do what he wanted. You know, was it Raoul, the guy who sort of did investigation for him? Was that the right name? You know, oh, you want to have a quiet night in? No, go and do this. Go and do that. Go and do this. You know, it was very much a case of, I'll throw my cash about and I want everybody to jump when I say jump. You know, that's not a nice person. And he hadn't.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Lorna, but that is a character who is kind of, you know, that's his job, is to get that information and get it on time and get the ball rolling and sort it out for his client. And even though he doesn't like his client, he's going to do the best he can for his client. And I kind of took that as being a driving force of the character.
But at no time did he show any sort of concern for anyone apart from what he wanted done.
Do you think he had an awareness of his own character?
Probably not in that way. That's how he was. That when he sort of thought that, you know, everybody just should do what he wanted, and there are lots of people like that. And you know, you were saying that the first wife is saying that, oh, we still love you, sort of idea. I think that was the author sort of trying to make him appear better than he was, because he showed no affection or consideration for either ex-wife.
He did want to be a good father, though, and I thought he made.
Oh
that,
yeah,
you know,
provided he didn't actually have to provide cash, because he'd rather spend it sort of on his house and sort of having this mortgage he couldn't afford. He never spent any time with her until the beginning of the book. You know, it's all very well saying that you're a good father, but you know, deeds speak louder than words, and there was nothing in the book to suggest that he did. The wife had taken over the more mundane job to provide a stable background for the daughter, which he wasn't prepared to do.
Yeah, but I don't think he actually said that he was a good father. He said he wanted to be a good father, and he seemed to me to be sort of trying to work towards that, which I thought was quite. It was a redeeming feature, because I say I didn't like him. I didn't like him at all for a long while.
No.
It took a while to get into it. But once I did, I thought it was quite believable, because he was just doing his job. And
Can I ask,
in that sort of profession,
Yes, but there's lots of
like that all
lawyers
the
do
time.
jobs without having to be that type of character.
Yeah, but I know more that are like him than are not, if I'm honest.
he's like a defence lawyer for scumbags, isn't he? So,
yeah, basically. He's not a rumpole. He's not.
You know what? If you
plus he
know,
had money worries. That was,
if you know
it as
anything,
well. Just had a backdrop of money worries. You know, he was stretched in his mortgage.
Yeah.
well, you know, I worked in a law firm. I had 155 attorneys. Most of them were that way.
Yeah.
The nature of the beast is to be cutthroat and to get the job done. And the nastier you are, the more money you make, because you're the one that usually wins. Because you don't stop. You make everybody jump through hoops. You don't care about holidays. And I can tell you, that's why people make more money when they work for lawyers. And I had, because you put up with a lot, and I had a girlfriend who was a lawyer at that firm, and my favorite line to her was, I like you in spite of the fact that you are a lawyer, because most of them are not very nice. You know, they're like that. They have a hard edge and a drive that's tough. Yeah, it's hard.
But the thing is,
so he was pretty much on the money too. I mean,
you know, why should I like him? You've just said
Laura,
yourself that you like this person in spite of being a lawyer.
Isn't it okay to dislike him though? I mean, for me, don't you think that the whole Jesus Martinez thing is in there to sort of redeem Haller? In other words, I always think of Haller as sort of the Humphrey Bogart of Casablanca, as opposed to the Humphrey Bogart of the Maltese Falcon. In the first one, Casablanca, you've got the cynic redeemed by love, right? So you've got Mickey Haller, who works out of the backseat of his car, and he does represent all of the cynicism, not just of American capitalism, but of the American capitalist legal system, which is what all that Mr. Green stuff is in the beginning. But remember his father used to tell him that the most dangerous client you can have is an innocent man. And then he realizes that he's pleaded out Jesus Martinez. And as all of this stuff unrolls, here he has a chance to become a millionaire, which he trades off on, right? I mean, because he knows that the kid, what's the young boy's name? I'm really bad with character names. Louis Roulet, right? That as the interviews with Louis Roulet roll, right, he discovers that Louis is actually not just guilty, but really a violent psychopath. And here he has a perfect opportunity.
A monster, yes.
He has a perfect opportunity to get him off and to keep making millions of dollars. And he chooses rather to redeem his earlier flaw, where the guy, Jesus, the guy he pleaded out. I mean, I think that I like disliking Mickey Haller, and I agree with you 100%. But that to me is the beauty and complexity of the book.
I agree. I think this whole story felt to me like, the whole book felt to me like the start of a redemption for Mickey Haller, both personally and professionally. So we have this character who's pretty obnoxious and clicks his fingers to get people to jump, and he's treated people badly, but there's still something in him that people see and that people want to befriend, support, love, whatever. And professionally and personally, it feels like he's starting to come to that redemption point by the end of the book.
For me,
so do you think you can have an unlikable character and still enjoy the book?
Yeah.
As long as they don't remain unlikable from start to finish.
Yeah.
Because then it makes you wonder why you've spent so much time with them. But I think when a character does, develop, and also there is a sort of balance between, wanting to spend your time with nice characters, but at the same time, you do need to have some credibility. And I think, American lawyers are not known for their niceness. So, that would not have been, to me, credible. But I thought the journey that he went on and the way he changed throughout the book was well worth doing. I mean, that felt as though that was a book that I would spend more time with, and I would read the next one and probably the next one if it carried on. So I think the author did what they set out to do with it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I would only read a book where I thought the character was likable, because likable is something different.
No, I would agree with that. He doesn't have to be totally likable, but I just sort of felt he just rubbed me up the wrong way. And I didn't feel that there were any of the other characters really drawn out as much to be whole characters, you know what I mean? Because you're only really seeing them from Haller's point of view. So I'm not sort of saying that the book's at fault there. You're only sort of, when you're only seeing it from one person, you only get one side of their character. But if you're sort of saying that you want him to go through this redemption, but I believe this is the first of a series, so do you expect him to be a better person in the following books?
He's
and
very
if he
Well, it would
wasn't,
be interesting to see whether he's slipped back to being, what he was at the beginning of this book, or whether actually, whether he really is spending more time with his daughter, whether he really is taking on, cases that have more merit in the justice system and fighting them in a way that he thinks he can win for the client, rather than just, deal with the practicalities of the trade-offs in the legal system. So that's what kind of makes me interested now. Is that going to carry on? Or is he going to backslide? Or is he going to be forced into doing something that actually he's no longer comfortable with? So there's kind of all questions that are coming up. So that would take me into the next one.
It's only ever going to be a
Remember, he
hard-bitten lawyer,
does
isn't he? He's only ever going to be that hard-bitten lawyer. He can't see him being a nice guy lawyer defending mob villains or whatever. Yeah. I don't think there's going to be much change. You might see his daughter more, more weekend. But I quite like this. It's a bit hackneyed, you can say. You kind of picture there's a film about it. He's kind of blustering away. He's kind of permanently angry. Yeah. But,
well, there's a film because I watched the trailer for it this afternoon.
Oh, Lorna? Have you seen the film?
No, I watched the trailer. I wasn't prepared to pay the £3.50 to watch it, and I didn't like it.
You know what? I would be so interested to see what you think of the movie. And just so you know, Matthew McConaughey has written a book about this role because he was famous in Hollywood. He only did romantic comedies, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, Failure to Launch. We call them rom-coms right here. And he didn't take any roles for 2 years because they kept offering him these romantic comedies. And then he got The Lincoln Lawyer. That really absolutely changed up his career. And I thought they did and it's a great cast. I thought they did a really beautiful job of it. So I would be so interested in your thoughts after you.
Does Matthew play Mickey Haller?
Matthew McConaughey is Mickey Haller. Marissa Tomei is the ex-wife prosecutor. William H. Macy is the investigator. Ryan Philippe is Louis, what's his name, Roulet. It's a great cast. And I
might check it out.
And they sort of...
It was on Amazon.
And Lorna, I think that they shift Mickey Haller in a direction you might like more. I think I'd be really, really interested in your thoughts after.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I watched the film many, many years ago, and reading the book, it sort of reminded me as I went along. I can remember it all. But it was interesting reading the book with that character and knowing that Matthew McConaughey played it, because every time I was reading his position, I was hearing his southern drawl almost,
Yeah.
And it really helped me in the book. I liked the book, I liked the different characters, and I did like those small cases at the beginning because, like someone said, I knew there would be dropping in at points. I really did like. I quite liked his character, and I liked the way he was quite brash up front and demanding. But then I sort of think, well, he's sort of fighting the system. He's one man against the system, so he's sort of got to be like that. He's got to be this hard playing, a lawyer to fight that system. So I really enjoyed the book.
I think also because his father was a successful lawyer, I think he kind of feels in his shadow a bit, People still remember his father, there's books written about him. But he's like a lawyer that goes around hustling in the back of his car, I'm just wondering in the later books if we might kind of explore that about him, does he feel like a failure compared to his father, who he never knew really anyway? Yeah.
I also thought that maybe it was a bit of an homage to the sort of Raymond Chandler, that kind of noir. Absolutely. It had that sort of feel, didn't it? To
absolutely.
The wisecracking, brash, hard-boiled.
Yeah. I thought so too.
So that's why I kind of accepted some of the sexism and some of the, things, because it was written a while back, but also it was more that it was a kind of homage to that period.
Yes, but it was still written this century, whereas when the sexism that he was displaying is not acceptable.
Yeah.
So, it's all very well saying that Raymond Chandler's characters could be sexist, but that we're speaking about a different time gap here.
by the sexism, Lorna, do you mean the way he talks to his two ex-wives? I mean, do you mean?
I mean the way
do
that.
You mean the crime?
I mean that there is not a female character in the book that he relates to in a positive way.
You're right.
You know, there's a whole paragraph about how when he sees a female in prison, that they're all just a waste of time and only survive because they've got a man. I forget which page that was on, but it was like he didn't like going visiting women in prison because of this. You know, that they were all just dependent on men and couldn't survive without them. And you know, his relationship with his ex-wives, it was very much a case of, yeah, with the one that
Michael McPherson.
No, the other one that who sort of ran his office, sort of idea.
Lorna. Her name was Lorna.
There's still
Lorna.
was, yes. How did I forget? You know, it was very much, you know, he still thought she was beautiful and he would like to get to bed with her, but you know, that was all. You know, there was no sort of relationship. It was all a case of serve me, do as you're told. There was no respect for his first wife either, who was a very successful prosecutor.
Did you not think he had a more level relationship with Maggie?
Yes, but he still didn't think that her job was up to much compared to his.
Impression.
I didn't either. I'm quite intrigued to go back and read it again now, thinking, did I not have my feminist head on? Because I kind of took this as being, I mean, the way he sees himself, and the way he acts, and the way he thinks. You know, he obviously sees himself as a hard-boiled character, but actually, when you look at what he does, most of the time, I kind of thought, well, actually, you know, he seemed very real, and I didn't pick up on these kind of.
I'm not saying it's not real, but I'm saying he's sexist and a bully.
But are we then saying that no characters in books are not allowed to be sexist? I mean, I'm not saying.
I'm saying I didn't like him because of it.
Sorry?
I'm saying I didn't like him because of it.
Yeah, okay.
You know, yeah.
I'm
just not sure whether the author had intended this or not.
For me,
I haven't got it whether it's a sort of unconscious on the part of Michael Connelly, or whether this is how he wanted the character to be.
No, I don't think his what's his other long-running series. I don't think that character is in a similar vein at all. Bosch.
Yeah.
I was going to say, he's a good guy.
I think it's the character. Yeah.
And I think it's so interesting the way that he, Connelly, I mean, has this Bosch character and then creates Mickey Haller and weaves them together in a few novels. And you see how they're very different people, and yet they have the same father. There are certain things they have in common. And, you know, Connelly has a style that you can sort of pick up on. But I thought that it was, quite honestly, really creative and clever, the way that he creates this new character and then weaves his story in with his half-brothers as the series goes on.
Just, on that point, that Bosch has created a female detective now named Renee Ballard, and she kind of wraps around sort of one of the last Bosch novels, and I'm expecting him to write that character, and that should, especially given what Lorna has been saying, that should be really cool to read and to see how he handles a woman. I never noticed any of the things that you point out, Lorna, but now that you say it, I sort of feel like I can't unsee it.
Oh, sorry, I don't want to spoil the book for anyone else. I'm just sort of saying how I felt while I was reading it. That
I changed the way I think about Mickey Haller now in this. But let's not forget that he's getting off this homicide of a woman. And remember that Louis Roulet keeps, his thing is, I gave some bitch what she deserved. And so what it is that women deserve seems to be something that Mickey is engaging with. Otherwise, he would have let the case go. but you really changed the way I think about Mickey now.
Shall we talk about Roulet? Did you believe Roulet was innocent?
Yeah. I did. Early on in the novel, I was completely sold by it, and even seeing the film many years ago, but I was just remembering it as I kept going. But it sort of, I thought straight away he was in it, and I fully bought I've been set up by this girl, I'm rich, they want to take me for a ride, taking my money. But as they sort of it unfolded, I was like, oh, I remember now. Yeah, I know where this is going, sort of touch, and I completely then went totally the other way. But with regards to what happened right at the end with the mother,
and for anybody watching, this is where spoilers are going to come in.
Completely
Carry on, Craig.
And completely blew me away, or blew him away. You know, it was interesting, that last bit, but I was completely sold it early on in the novel until it started to unfold. I was like, yeah, I remember it.
So I love the way he sort of slides you into Louis Roulet like that. I thought it was really, really well done and really smart. And that you start out with this kind of rich, entitled, American prick, and then you suddenly start to get this. I mean, in terms of what you're saying, Lorna, this anti-feminist, these bitches, and more comes out of Lewis's language. There's also, I mean, this is, that the OJ trial was just going on, but he actually spent some time talking about the Robert Blake verdict. And I don't know, you all are much younger you're much too young to remember Robert Blake, but that was actually a really important acquittal. He was a big American TV star, retired, nobody cared about him for years. And he apparently went into a bar, got a gun, and walked down the street to a car where his wife was sitting in it and just shot her in the head. And then he got acquitted. And so when they're talking about that, that's kind of the background to some of the anti-feminism that you find in Haller, but that's back and to this case and to this whole notion of women getting what they deserve.
I think it's easy for readers to believe Roulet was innocent because right at the very first sentence of the book is the sentence about the hardest client is the innocent client. Right. So you've already got it in your head that somebody within the book is a genuinely innocent client. But what stage did you start to disbelieve him?
To me, it came when we started to find out a bit more about Jesus. And then I started to think, oh, hang on a minute, maybe he's the innocent. I knew there was somebody innocent in there somewhere. And as we started to learn a bit more about his story, I started to think, well, maybe he's the innocent person. And he's been set up. And the setup's been done by Roulet, not by anybody else.
It was the aligning of the two crimes and the injuries that happened to both women. That was my point. I was like, oh God, yeah.
For me, it was in the lawyer's office where they're having that afternoon meeting, and he says, I woke up and there were two fags sitting on me, right? And what's the investigator's name? Says there were two men sitting on him, and he says, I stand corrected, it was two fags. I mean, but the way Lewis used that language, I thought was kind of a cue, that he was not the innocent victim that he was representing, that we were getting when he was in lockup.
Yeah.
But I think Dobbs was aware. The twist with the mother.
Oh God.
Twist with the mother. That was amazing. I never saw that coming, ever. Never saw that coming.
No. Did anybody else see that coming?
No.
I saw that.
I did suspect it because she was so, I mean, he was, I mean, I just thought she would do that. She seemed like the character who would do that. So it didn't come as a surprise. And when there was all the thing about his electronic tag and how that could be done, And I was thinking, well, the simplest thing, you got somebody else to do it. And I was thinking, well, you know, he's very rich, he could pay somebody or, you know, whatever. And then I thought, actually, somebody might do it for him, and the only person would have been his mother. So, yeah.
And I loved how, I'm sorry.
Rubbish. See, Cecil Dobbs or whatever his name was.
Yeah. I love the way he misdirected us on the mother, because the mother made up this story about being raped in a house. And so much of the energy of the defense was Lewis protecting his mother. That's why he bought the knife. That's why he carries the knife. And then it turns out that it's been the mother has been, you know, protecting him all along.
I never bought that. I absolutely didn't buy that. But I was led down the garden path right at the beginning when the lawyer said, like, you know, Mickey said, I want the mother out, because she was starting to be very quite controlling at the beginning. So that was sort of, to me, that sort of, I started, oh, she's quite a controlling mother. And so I never bought that she was attacked in that house at all. But Bush, that end sort of knocked me flat, definitely.
But then there was this person who was actually attacking real estate people in the house.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So it was sort of built on a possibility.
It was, but to me, it was just too convenient, and it was too much thrown in as evidence at the right time to support the son, and I just questioned it, and it never sat true to me. It was true that this was going on, and you know, and it happens. You know, it's happened in this country, but this actual case just seemed to come up at the wrong time. Although it's believed by the lawyer, but to me, I was always constantly, really, and he did question it as well, and he constantly questioned it. Like, you know, he constantly pushed at it. I thought when he kept questioning the son.
But it is interesting to think that would a mother actually go and kill because somebody has, you know, because her son has asked her? Yeah.
I think there are mothers who might do that, and in that sense, I thought her character was, I don't know if the word is believable, but I could see how she did what she did.
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of sort of believe how it would be, but in some ways it felt a bit like an author's device. You know, how can I get Roulet to have committed this murder? I need someone else to have done it. You know, who could it be? You know,
wasn't the death sentence on the table though, if he was found guilty?
Yeah, but I mean, you think if you're a strong woman in your own right, you know, would you really tolerate or be prepared to use, you know, would she actually be willing to go and do that killing herself as opposed to find another way to silence the investigator? Is really what I'm trying to get at. You know, because actually killing someone, as Haller himself says in the, you know, towards the end of the book, you know, it's a big thing. I think
it is, but I think there was sort of a very strong feeling for me that, you know, her son was more valuable than any other human being on earth, and therefore it wouldn't be that big a decision for her. It would be, you know, that would just be necessary, and the person she's killing would not be, you know, would not be a proper human being. I mean, Roulet's attitudes towards, you know, fags, for example, must have come from somewhere, and my assumption was it was a family, you know, that was coming from his background, and therefore, you know, less than human, so, you know, no value to the world. I'm not saying it would have been easy, but it seemed, it didn't throw up any flags for me as to not being psychologically reasonable that she would do it.
And Connelly drops a lot of hints in throughout about how ruthless she is and how controlling she is, and you know, she's you know, she's done a lot of stuff to protect him in the past, you would assume, because this kind of come from nowhere, this action.
No.
You know, I think we can think of it also as kind of an indictment of the super rich in our country, of wealthy people. I mean, those of us who are in the States can tell you that we have a wealth gap now in our country that is more like what you had in Western Europe in the Middle Ages. I mean, you have this class of people who really, really do control about 45% of our national wealth. And I think that Connelly writes with a deep sense of how entitled money makes you feel. And I feel like we're supposed to be getting a lot of that with Roulet, mother and son, that they just feel like they can do whatever they want.
And if I can add to that, it goes beyond how it makes you feel. You are empowered if you have a lot of money.
That's right.
And you know, the mother here is, I mean, I was reading this and I was thinking she's the ultimate, what we call helicopter parent. I've been in higher education for a lot of years, and I've seen a lot, and in high school before then, education, I've seen a lot of parents and heard of even more who will go to quite a lot of lengths to protect their child, and not just safety stuff, but to give their child advantages, to do this, to do that. We had a case, for example, in the States of a cheerleader's mother who attempted murder of another, I think, cheerleader, because she wanted her daughter. There are parents who do these things. And so even though this was pushing it, I didn't think it was outside the realm of, hey, you know what? I could see it. And you're right about the whole idea of wealth and class. Someone who is that financially well off assumes that everything's going to go their way. They can afford the best lawyers, the best medical care, the best this, the best that. Well, why isn't there a VIP entrance? These are things that actually happen. And no, I don't want to monopolize, but I'm reading this book and I'm thinking of what life is like here in Southern California. Now, I don't live in LA, I live a few hours south, but still, there is this group of people with that kind of money, that kind of influence, that kind of power. And they're everywhere in the country, but the kind of extremely wealthy Southern Californian that she's portrayed as being, that rang pretty true to me.
If I could just to second what Margot is saying, also without wanting to dominate, in Boca Raton, my wife is a speech language pathologist, a speech therapist at a high school, and it is very common for mothers to come in for parent-teacher conferences and to bring a lawyer with them. Right? It's very, I'm saying, you know, it happened. I mean, because they're looking for that lawsuit. You know, my kid makes A's. You know,
really?
Yeah. And this isn't, I mean, this isn't a kid getting beat up on the playground or a cheerleader competition. We're talking about something that a teacher says in class or a paper grade. So the class of people that, and I find this true in the Bosch novels too. I think that Connelly is very, very aware of and very sensitive to this big class difference. Remember that Mickey says at a couple of points in the novel that it shows how our world works, because he's a defense lawyer and he's got a big house with a view, and his wife, who is a prosecutor, has a little tiny house down in the flats. Remember that? He's talking about the difference.
Yes. And I think that played into the idea that he wasn't actually thinking her job was less important, but just that society saw it as less important rather than and because he'd recognized that, I suppose a bit of me thinks that he wasn't being, you know, he wasn't belittling her, and that sort of goes back to what we were talking about, Lorna. There's this kind of, now I really want to read it again now. You've started something here.
Oh, don't bother reading that again.
No, but that's really interesting. Because
be like Lorna, read the second one. I mean, you know, this time next week, Lorna will have read 30 books by you'll have read everything. See, I didn't like that series. Lorna, you read much faster and more effectively than me. I'll say that for sure.
Oh, I don't think so.
During the trial, how did it make you feel when Haller broke Reggie Campo down on the stand and get Roulet off with the crime, knowing that he was guilty?
I always thought he had a plan. So there was a bit of me thinking he's got, you know, this is for a purpose, because he's made it very clear it's for a purpose.
But it wasn't helping Reggie
horrendous.
Campo.
No,
it
wasn't.
His overall plan was to get justice for Roulet, but for Reggie Campo, justice against Roulet, or whatever he wanted to do to Roulet. But Reggie Campo was kind of destroyed in court, and she won't have known anything about what was happening in Mickey's mind. Did anybody kind of think twice about what was happening there?
I think in a way I didn't, because I just thought it was part of the bigger picture. He needed to get this Roulet, and poor Reggie Campo ended up being a bit of flack along the side to get at the character.
And I also took it kind of perhaps as read that although he had to do this dreadful thing in court, that if he could get him on something where it became apparent that he shouldn't have got off, then she would get her civil suit and she would get her justification, and therefore there would be, you know, something in the future for her. But I mean, I didn't get the impression that he was enjoying it. I got the impression he saw it as the only way that he could make this happen.
As we've all said before, this was his job.
Yeah,
as a defense lawyer.
Yeah. But it was very clear that he wanted to get Roulet on, you know, for Roulet to not be able to just carry on and do somebody else.
Yeah, you could see that there was going to be a plan.
Yeah.
But in British law, if the lawyer knows for fact that their client is guilty, they have to excuse themselves as being embarrassed rather than try and build a case that they're not guilty.
Oh, you know for a fact, though. That's a get out clause, isn't it?
Roulet had told him he'd done it.
Roulet told him, he told him.
So it kind of surprised me that he could still defend him to that extent when you can't do that in UK law.
Never really heard of a case like that, though. Or is it, maybe it's more common than I think, but...
Well, you're not allowed to lie, are you, in court? So they can't, if they know their client is guilty, then they can't go down the defence where they're you know, misrepresenting what has happened. So that's why they are professionally embarrassed and they have to excuse themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why actually some English barristers say that they don't ever ask their client if they've done it or not, because they don't want to be put in that situation. Yeah.
Well, that's the first thing Mickey says to Lewis when he meets him, because I don't want to know whether you did it or not. But Rebecca, I have a question for you about your question. Is, don't you think he's balancing off the Donna Renteria murder? Because by this time he's been threatened. Lewis has taken his gun, has threatened his family, killed his investigator, and so the game is way out of control by now. And he has figured out that Lewis killed Donna Renteria. So isn't the interrogation of, God, I can't remember the other girl's name now. Isn't the Regina Campo? Isn't that interrogation supposed to set up for this big sort of denouement that we're going to have, where we're going to have him arrested for Donna Renteria's murder?
Yes, that's what's supposed to happen in the story, but it just felt a little bit sad that she was getting kicked for the bigger picture. If anybody else had picked up on that.
I felt sad about it too, but it fit to me with the larger scope of what he was doing in court and what he was trying to do and the kind of lawyer he is. It wouldn't, to me, have been as authentic if he had given her an easy time, because that wouldn't be what he would do. That wouldn't be what an aggressive defense attorney would do.
And his client would have noticed.
Yeah.
So he was in a position where he had to kind of look as though he was going all out. Because,
and the prosecution You would have noticed.
And also, in a way, it is his way of criticizing the legal system, because that to me felt like the ongoing theme throughout the book. Yes, he's using the system and he's playing the system and he's being aggressive about it and so on, but at the same time he's disenchanted with the system. He's learned to play it, but he doesn't really believe it in it anymore. And so it's this theme comes through, and so maybe that was the only way that he could do it. And it shows that the only way you can achieve your objectives is by having collateral damage, and that's a very sad thing.
I think that's what the book is about, really. I think that the book is about the cost of justice, the cost of law. But also, can we say that, I mean, he pushes her so hard on the stand in order to force the prosecutor, Minton. And remember, Minton, he's young, but he comes from a great school and he's really cocky, right? And he's really arrogant. But this is to force Minton to put the jailhouse snitch on the stand, which is how he gets Lewis caught up in the Donna Renteria murder, right? And in fact, the jailhouse snitch does it by lying, right? Because Donna Renteria did not have a snake tattooed across her body, right? I mean, he sets all this stuff up. He told me she came out of a box with a snake. Lewis never told him any of that stuff. That's stuff that I forgot the woman's character who was in the jail.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's actually really smart the way Connelly sets this all up. Yeah. But the reason for brutalizing Campo was to force Minton to put that jailhouse snitch on the stand, so that Howard, and then remember, Lewis is really happy with what he does with Campo, and then suddenly with the jailhouse snitch, you go, what are you doing? What are you doing? Right? And that's when, and then at the end there where Mickey gets to say, well, I got you off like you paid me to. Now it's time for you to find another lawyer. That's a very satisfying moment in the book for me.
I actually really liked Ted Minton.
You did?
I did. I thought he was lovely.
Years over before it started, wasn't it?
It was like, this is right and this is wrong, and I'm on the side of right.
And he lost.
I really liked him.
Because the novel says that's not how right and wrong work. Though, you make me think, Rebecca, I wonder if he's going to show up in any of the later books.
Minton.
Because Bosch is in the second book.
He's got a job.
Is he?
Yeah.
He does need a job now.
Not that firm. He won't be, but I can tell you he won't be at that firm. He'll be in his own firm or someplace else, but they'll get rid of him for that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
He's gone.
For sure.
Yeah, you get one mistake like that and you're gone. Yeah.
Sure.
There's no kindness to that.
It's a harsh
world
over there.
Yeah. It's very harsh. Believe me, it's harsh. Very harsh. And you have it. And when I worked there, I kept changing departments because I felt like each department was toxic in its own way. So I would go from matrimony to criminal, and, just because they were all hard lawyers. Good lawyers, but hard.
Yeah. It sounds it. Does anybody else have anything they want to say about the book?
I just wanted to say that when I started reading, I almost had this feeling of relaxing into a good book where you feel you're in the hands of a competent writer who knows where he wants to take you, and you just let yourself go for the journey, and sometimes you don't always have that feeling, especially when it's the first in a series, but I guess it wasn't the first book for him. Obviously it wasn't his debut or anything like that, so it just gave me that feeling of comfort and okay, I'm in for a good read kind of thing, whether I like the characters or not, whether I agree with what's happening, whether I spot any plot holes or whatever, but I know that he's going to take me for a good journey.
It did feel like a safe pair of hands. I agree.
Exactly.
You could just let yourself go with it. Yeah.
Exactly.
So the overall consensus is it was enjoyed.
Yeah.
Yes.
I actually admired it. I thought it was a really beautiful book. And I think Michael Connelly is just such a master. I mean, I think he's a writer. He's a living writer now, but he's somebody whose work we're going to remember for generations. I read a book by Denise Mina this week, and I'm sort of loving reading Tana French, and her books are all so psychological, and they're filled with the kind of thought work in the process of, whereas this is so hard boiled. I mean, he's just saying he did this and he did that. I mean, the other thing I think I want to say about Michael Connelly is I love his sense of place. I think that's because in Boca Raton, in Palm Beach County, there is no place. You know, like Gertrude Stein had said about Oakland, there is no there here, right? There's, you know, and he loves LA and he loves music. He loves jazz. He has made a documentary about, I want to say Frank Morgan, who did 20 years on a drug sentence. And one of my favorite passages in The Lincoln Lawyer is when he's talking about Tupac Shakur. And he's defending hip hop and rapping because Mickey listens to rap and actually has quite a broad knowledge, which I can say I cannot boast, I do not have. But it kind of led me to some of Tupac from the book. And Mickey's notion of how good and evil work together is sort of, to me, articulated. It's just at that moment by hip hop music. It's just at that moment that he learns he's put an innocent man in prison and that he's got to get Louis Roulet convicted somehow, that he puts on his hip hop music and listens to it. And I love Michael Connelly for writing music and music that maybe we overlook into his, Bosch is a jazz guy, turntable and vinyl guy. And I love him for writing how much he loves LA and how much he loves music.
Yeah, good. Glad it was enjoyed by most, which is all we can hope for each month.
True.
Okay, I'm going to stop the recording. If you can just hang on a couple of seconds afterwards, and I'll let you know what we're going to vote on next month. Okay, so thanks everyone for coming, and I will see you again next month.